This show is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute the practice of medicine, nursing, or other professional healthcare services, including the giving of medical advice. The content on this show is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical condition they have, and they should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such condition.
This is Rooted in Healing with Dr. Beth Claxton, exploring the science of functional medicine and the power of healing from within. Breathe in, breathe out. And now your host, Dr. Beth Claxton.
Welcome to another episode of Rooted in Healing. I'm Dr. Beth Claxton, your host. Today we have with us a very interesting guest, Dr. Sam Shay, who is a chiropractor and also a functional medicine certified practitioner who has a unique way of weaving together genetics, nutrigenomics, which is how we can modify our genetics through our nutrition and our supplementation, testing our biomarkers, which are the lab tests that we do as functional medicine doctors, and weaving it all together so that we can use all of this information for our own unique treatment. So highly individualized approach, just like functional medicine is. We recently spoke with John O'Connor in episode 18 of Rooted in Healing. John has the business called My Gene Food, and this is a service that will take your genetic analysis and break it down and help you find a diet that is good for you. This is an initial step to anyone's wellness path. And Dr. Shay takes this one step further by taking a highly individualized approach to breaking down your genetics. And I think it's important to say now, initially when the Human Genome Project came out with the sequencing of our own unique genetics, everyone was really afraid of knowing that because we felt like our genes became our destiny. Well, we know now, if we choose to view it this way, our genes can be incredibly informative to help us make decisions about how to lead our life, how to dismiss lifestyle practices or adopt lifestyle practices that will be beneficial to us as we help our genes express themselves. This is a practice called epigenetics, and we will be talking with Matt Dawson, who's a medical doctor who has a business called True Diagnostic, and he will be talking about epigenetic expression. And today we're going to talk about our own genetics, our biomarkers, how we can change those. And Sam uses himself so beautifully as a very vulnerable and authentic example of his own journey and how he came to find this practice. So I'd love to have you come back to listen to this very insightful interview with Dr. Sam Shay. This is Rooted in Healing. I'm Dr. Beth Claxton, and we will be right back.
And now, more Rooted in Healing with Dr. Beth Claxton.
Hi, welcome back. Thanks for sticking around. Today we have with us Dr. Sam Shay. Dr. Shay is a chiropractor, doctor of chiropractic. He's also an Institute for Functional Medicine certified practitioner and is a functional medicine expert, speaker, and stand-up comic who helps people get out of their survival mode and reclaim their energy, focus, and vitality through personalized functional lab testing and his signature neuroharmony model. After overcoming years of chronic fatigue, insomnia, and digestive issues since childhood, Dr. Sam turned his recovery into a mission. He spent the last 25 years mastering the science of nutrition, mind-body medicine, and clinical lab testing to decode the root cause of burnout, overwhelm, and chronic health issues. Known as the friendly lab nerd, Dr. Sam makes advanced lab testing approachable, combining deep data analysis with relatable insights to help clients balance hormones, heal the gut, optimize sleep, and reduce inflammation. His unique neuroharmony model weaves together functional testing with nervous system regulation to create sustainable health, not just short-term system fixes. He's been featured on over 200 podcasts and summits and brings an engaging, humorous tone to even the most complex health topics. Dr. Sam empowers his audience with practical tools to feel better and function at their best. Welcome, Dr. Sam. Are you going to make us laugh today?
Definitely not. For sure not. That'd be...
Yeah, thanks for joining us. So can you talk a little bit more about your story and your history and what was going on in your childhood and your path to functional medicine?
Sure. So my story is, the structure of the story is very similar for most people who get into natural medicine, which is they had a significant health problem themselves, or there was a friend or family member that they witnessed have a significant health problem, and then from journeying through to try to solve those issues for themselves or their loved one, they decided to become a practitioner to help others shorten the learning curve and prevent and reverse the suffering so that other people didn't have to suffer the way that they did. Mm-hmm. So it's such a common story. It's been written in the stars. The Greeks call it the Chiron, the wounded healer. And that's follow a very similar pattern. The details, the specific details, that when I was, my earliest memories, when I was 6 years old, came from a really a horrible divorce of my parents, incredibly stressful. They really handled it terribly, and me and my siblings all tried to cope in our own ways, and then combined with a lot of violence at school. Just everything at home, school was extremely hard, and I developed severe crippling insomnia, a really bad indigestion, eating disorder, sugar addiction, video game addiction, lots of chronic pain from the injuries, and lots of anxiety and depression. And so this kind of just kept going on. And I decided in high school that I had to take control of my own health, because both my parents, being psychiatrists, thought my issues were a antidepressant deficiency or attention-seeking behavior, as opposed to them actually investigating what was actually happening. So I decided to take control of my own health and read a book by Dr. Jensen, who's considered the grandfather of naturopathy in the West, and then found a mentor that was also skilled in natural health. And then she helped me realize that I was not a victim of my own thoughts, and that I could use neurology and my body to help me change the way that I viewed the world, and then make a decision that I could create my own agency, and choose my own path going forward instead of what my parents predetermined for me, and decided to go into natural medicine as opposed to being the third generation medical doctor that I was, ordained to be. So I then went to college and studied pre-med and did a holistic health practitioner degree on the weekends, and the certificate on the weekends and evenings. Then really decided to go to chiropractic school, simply because of the wider range of licensing options there were at the time, and got very heavy into functional neurology and nutrition and lifestyle, and then started looking at lab testing, and then later on when I opened my first practice, I also went and got an acupuncture degree, and then got very involved in functional medicine and then functional genetics, and then ended up where I am today, which is working with functional genetics and functional testing. And I also help other practitioners bring genetics into their practices as well. So not only doing genetics, but teaching other practitioners how to run genetics for their clients and patients.
Yeah, fascinating story. And there are two parts of your story that I want to highlight. The first one is the eating disorder, the way that you thought as a child.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and I want to highlight this just for the listeners, that when we're children and we're very small, we're trying to make sense of the world from the resources that we have. And even though we develop sugar addiction and we are bullied at school, all of these things, and we have these maladaptive behaviors that come out of it, we need to, or it's really important. It's vital to treat all of these with compassion, because this is us as children trying to make sense of the world. And I think, to me, it seems like a lot of people get really hard on themselves in dealing with these things, or eating disorders, whatever it may be, when it was us as children trying to put it all together with limited resources.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I'll add in an extra variable on the self-blame and shame and sense-making, is that I also have a form of autism that I didn't find out until 2019, when I was 38 years old. That I have a form of autism which was formerly called Asperger's syndrome, and so growing up, I only realized, in my late 30s, that I realized I wasn't born with really any social software. So the issue with being on the spectrum is that I took things really literally, including what the bullies and assailants would say at school. I thought they were telling the truth, when in fact they were just toying with me and lying and all the rest of it. And so it was deeply confusing, and then I would take criticisms of me quite literally, and I would take people at their word literally. And it took me a very long time to figure out that there were things like aversive personalities and deception and all the rest of it. And so growing up in the very formative years, I retreated to sugar to get some chemical stimulation, and then I would retreat to video games and television to kind of numb out. But also I would study sitcoms like a sociologist and an anthropologist to try to understand human dynamics. And that's where the stand-up comedy came from, was using humor. It was the sitcoms, things like, Full House, for example, and looking at family structures. Like, I like Full House because Carl Winslow and Urkel, I really obviously resonate with Urkel, given the nerd that I was. But I saw Carl Winslow as a really well-meaning, flawed, but really well-meaning father who was trying to keep engaged and keep the family together. And here I was, just in a highly fractured family, and a not supportive school system, and just trying to figure it out through television. Now, the risk of watching television to learn family dynamics is that it's risky, because if you try to learn family dynamics from Married with Children, it's like trying to learn psychology from Beavis and Butthead. So it wasn't an unambiguous positive trying to understand human behavior from watching sitcoms. So little asterisk of warning there for anyone who's trying to do the same. But what I've done since then is that part of the wound, comedy is a path to healing as well. Is that I last year in 2024 I produced a comedy show called Neurospicy: Love, Life, and Comedy on the Spectrum. That's available for free on YouTube for anyone to watch it. And it's the 60 minutes which I saw 30 years ago to explain how my brain worked and how to better adapt to a more normative world. So that I used comedy as a vehicle to change the world in the way that I wish it was for me back then. I did not have the resources or the awareness or even the verbiage of Asperger's or whatever back 30 years ago. But what I can do and have done is now provide the resource through the vehicle of comedy to educate those on the spectrum and those that aren't on the spectrum to understand what it's like to live with this different brain type. And if for those who may be thinking, my comedy, it's clean and observational and witty. There's no politics, there's no curse words, there's no gratuitous body fluid jokes. It's I would say if you just put a rating on it, I call it PG-13, not because of any risque content. It's because the content can be a bit heady for someone under 13. So I designed it for families to be able to watch together, just with the asterisk that if they're under 13, they may not fully understand what they're seeing.
Sam, I'm so impressed with your journey.
Thank you.
Like you're persistent, right?
Yeah.
That's great. So let's talk about the neuroharmony model. Can you tell us a little bit about, or a lot, as much as you want to, about the neuroharmony model?
Sure. So the neuroharmony model is my framework to help give a structure to someone I'm working with that is dealing with whatever health issue that's bothering them. And the neuroharmony model is a mind-body model, but updated. So people have heard like mind and body are connected. Well, the thing that's actually connecting them is biochemistry. And that's a missing piece. So you've got the physical body, the mental, emotional body, but then right in the middle is the biochemical body. And that's the intersection between the material and the non-material world is biochemistry. So when you look at a molecule, it's kind of a physical thing and it's kind of not. It's like electromagnetism kind of keeping these floating atoms together. So it's kind of there and not there at the same time. And it is the literal bridge between the mind and the body. And the reason why it's relevant to bring up the biochemistry as the link is that we can now test biochemistry. We now have functional labs. And people talk about mind-body medicine, but what they miss is the labs that connects the two. So whenever anyone is wanting to, go into holistic medicine, what does holistic medicine actually mean? It means you have someone who's able to look at what is going on in your physical world, what is going on with your mental world, but then also has a framework that can go into your biochemical reality and then unite all three together. That's the big picture. And for people listening, if you're trying to figure out what type of practitioner should work with, just make sure your practitioner has a framework. And it can be the neuroharmony model, it can be the triangle of health, it can be the 4 steps of this, the 5 pillars of this. It can be the inverted rhombus of wellness. I don't care. Just make sure they have a model that can account for the physical body, the mental emotional body, and labs. That you can have all of them together. The way I would describe holistic medicine, it's the best of Western medicine's lab diagnostic technology with the best of natural medicine's lifestyle, diet, nutrition interventions. So the neuroharmony model is my particular version of that. And there's 10 specific pillars of health that go into detail and dissecting all that out. But what's really important for people listening is make sure that whoever you're working with has a model that includes lab analysis, because otherwise you're missing out on so many different things that are contributing that are unseen, or things that could be optimized that are missed. Exactly.
One of the things I want to interject, I've been following my blood glucose with a continuous glucose monitor. And, the normal things spike at sugar for sure, which I don't do very often, processed foods, noodles, rice, things like that spikes right up.
But you found some surprise ones, didn't you?
I did, because when I go to sleep,
what were they? I'm curious.
when I go to sleep at night and my blood sugar is like getting down to 70, midnight, it spikes up. And there's some cortisol, something going on in the middle of the night. And so I started doing restorative yoga before I go to sleep. And it's been really helpful to even everything out. And restorative yoga is, for people who don't know, it's very calming, forward-bending yoga poses that help regulate the nervous system. It really brings on the parasympathetic rest and digest nervous system, lowers adrenaline, all of that. So that's been fascinating to watch.
Yeah, it's the power of actually having data, and we no longer have to guess, and we can just use testing in multiple forms. And there's even wearables that help pick up some sort of metrics. And I think wearables are really, really helpful. Really, really helpful. Some of them are super niche, like the continuous glucose monitors. But I would say that they're helpful, but they're insufficient, because you also need someone that can really look at more like the broad spectrum labs that are going on, or looking at genetics and getting a blueprint of what your body is more ideally suited for.
Yeah, so let's talk about genetics and how do you test the genetics, and then we'll weave that back into like diet and bio, like the testing and things like that. So
I test genetics. So there's multiple different ways to test genetics. Some people check through, saliva, through blood, but I do a cheek swab. Most people are very familiar with cheek swabs, particularly post-pandemic. And so the cheeks, you just basically, it takes less than 2 minutes, one side than the other, and then it's put in the little tubey thing and sent off to the lab. And the genetics, there's a bunch of different labs that are out there. I'm personally biased because I'm a distributor for Fit Genes here in the U.S., but I think that everyone should be getting a genetics test regardless, and because it's the single most high value test anyone can run for themselves without even a close second. And the reason why is that if you look at a genetic profile, you get that data once. You need to run it once and you're done. It's not like other functional testing like thyroid, mitochondria, gut, mercury, whatever it might be. Those are really valuable, valuable tests. But the thing is, the value of that test decays rapidly after the 3, 6, 9, or especially 12-month mark. So if you run an advanced genetics test once, then you have that data for life. And the value of a genetics test, or at least the test I'm most familiar with, is that you can genetically identify what you're best suited for in terms of diet. Like, is someone more of a keto style diet, or a paleo style diet, or a Mediterranean style diet, or a higher carb style diet? So that's like a carb tolerance that can be tested. Then you're looking at genetic reactivity to trigger foods. So some people are more genetically vulnerable to things like caffeine, like me. Like, I'm genetically vulnerable to caffeine-induced anxiety and depression, which, going back to how I grew up, like, I was so tired from all the insomnia starting when I was 6 years old. I literally developed a coffee habit when I was 6 just to stay awake to go to school. But I also had the genes. For the nerds out there, it's Adora 2A and also CYP1A2. But I have those genes have really bad versions of them, so I can't metabolize caffeine well, and I get caffeine-induced anxiety and depression. So this wasn't even really understood at all, 4 decades ago. That my psychiatrist parents just thought my anxiety and depression was just an SSRI deficiency or attention-seeking behavior, as opposed to what was all the processed food, sugar, caffeine, the effect of sleep deprivation on anxiety and depression, or what was happening at school. It was all just, it's kind of like the dark side of a chemical view of the world is like, oh, it's just a brain chemistry issue. Your life is fine. And as opposed to actually investigating, some people just have genetic vulnerabilities to certain things, like for me, it was caffeine. Other sensitivities that people may have are to histamine. And histamine, if people have histamine sensitivity, they may be experiencing water weight, headaches, indigestion, brain fog, itchy skin. Histamine is part of the body's inflammatory system. So if you eat higher histamine foods, you're bringing in a kind of a slow moving full body stimulus of internal inflammation that's triggering this histamine response that's creating those issues, again, like indigestion, water weight gain, brain fog, fatigue, etc. And you can figure out from a genetics test if you're vulnerable to those types of foods, and therefore you can change your diet accordingly. Other things that people can learn is, like, are they vulnerable to sugar cravings and over consuming sugar? That actually there is a massive genetic component, or do they lack do they have a gene that makes it harder for them to feel full from normal amounts of food? And so for people listening, like, well, if I have the gene, that means I crave sugar, over consume it, and I just don't feel less full in general, I'll just give up now and just start face palming all sorts of Doritos and Twinkies because there's no hope. That's not true. Looking at your genetics does not create that doesn't create this kind of nihilistic fatalism, like I should just give up now. And if you know that you're genetically vulnerable to those things, which I am genetically, then I don't try to increase my willpower to fend off the urge to eat sugar. Instead, I change my environment so sugar's not even around or within reach.
Yeah.
And so someone, go ahead.
Oh, it's a more compassionate way of going about it, right? So again, it's like mothering the child. These genes, they just need like a parent to take care of them, just like your fragile childhood. So and it's funny. I actually have the gene that it's hard I don't feel full as readily as other people do, and just knowing that, it's like, that's interesting. I need to just stop eating sooner.
Yeah,
and just
absolutely.
Wait and
you look at changing your environment, including your eating behaviors, as opposed to changing willpower. The kind of the one-liner is change your environment, not your willpower. And the things that people don't know, that unless they do the test, if they've got these vulnerabilities, and if they don't know, then they think that they're just weak-willed, and then they get shamed or self-shamed or shamed by others. But the solution is, again, just learn the strategies to change your environment as opposed to try to fight your willpower. Because the willpower will fail eventually. If you're tired enough, stressed enough, or any type of imbalance or thing that's happening in your world, your willpower is going to cave at some point, just given enough time.
For sure. For sure. So how would you determine an optimal diet with genetics? Is there more to say on that?
Yeah, there's a couple more things to say. So when determining your ideal diet, there's really four major categories. The first one is your genetic carb tolerance, and that's the one that determines if you're more of a keto style, paleo style, Mediterranean style, or higher carb style. And that's a very specific type of genetic test that's really hard, not readily commercially available. It is through my lab, but it's not looking at a variation of a gene. It's not looking at it as a green, yellow, or red dot. It's looking at the number of duplicates of a specific gene that makes the enzyme to break down carbs in the saliva. So the more copies of this gene you have, the more you're able to break down carbohydrates. So it's like, imagine your intestine is a fort, and the Visigoths are charging the fort, and they're the carbs charging your intestines, and it's the number of cannons you have lining the fort to mow down these carbs. So you can have between 1 and 20 copies of these. And then for people who have fewer copies, they can't really digest carbs. Higher copies, they can. I found out in 2016, of the 20 copies I could have, I have a grand total of 2, just 2. which is the second lowest you can possibly have. So I was eating a more of a Mediterranean style diet, which is more like 6, 7, 8 copies, whereas 2s are like low carb, paleo, borderline keto. So at the time, I was struggling with these real kind of fluctuations of energy, mood, and digestive issues throughout the day. And I was like, what is going on? I have local Mediterranean organic farmers market diet, and I'm still like not feeling super off. And I realized when I did the genetics test, it wasn't a carb quality issue, it was a carb quantity issue. And I was just eating too many carbs for my carb tolerance. So that's one leg of the table. The other leg of the table is looking at your trigger foods. So we mentioned caffeine, we mentioned histamine. There's other trigger foods that people need to genetically test for. So like your risk for gluten and celiac disease. So people who have the risk for celiac, they need to get off gluten permanently, no exceptions. And they need to know that. Like that is incredibly valuable information to know. People's genetic relationship with lactose. Are they able to digest lactose sugar or not? People's relationship with the genetics around salt. Now, most people associate salt with high blood pressure. I don't know about you, but clinically, I don't see high blood pressure with a red and yellow dot in those blood pressure genes. Instead, I see water retention. I see people swelling with water. Is that what you see? Because that's what I see clinically. I
don't test for that gene.
You don't test for that? Okay.
Yeah.
So I see people's sensitivity to salt. I see people's genetic vulnerability to alcohol. This one's interesting because this is the only test I've ever been able. I've done plenty of liver tests, functional liver tests, but there's a certain psychology of a person who's ready that there's a finality to seeing the genes that they suddenly make the behavior change. I've had 4 alcoholics stop alcohol on the spot when they saw their genes for alcohol metabolism.
Amazing.
Not all, definitely not all of them, but at least 4 have, because they're like, well, I'm direct quoting one of them. I guess this means, he looked at his lab, his genetics. He's like, well, I guess this means I can't have any more alcohol, does it? And I looked at him and I said, in your case, if your goal is optimal health and you have all these plans for the future that require you to be in your optimal physiological state, in your case, yeah, you need to stop drinking alcohol because you and alcohol aren't friends, according to your own genes, which don't change, by the way.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay. And he stopped.
That's amazing.
So he was ready. His mindset was ready, and he just needed that final push from the genes. So you got food triggers, you got carb tolerance. Those are 2 legs of the table. The third leg is looking at eating behaviors. We mentioned sugar consumption, sugar cravings. We mentioned satiety, or how full you feel. There's also your relationship to genetically. Are you a super taster for bitter, or are you a non-taster for bitter? Mm-hmm. And some people may think, well, why does that matter? It matters a lot. If you're a super taster for bitter, you can statistically not eat between 100 and 150 or even 200 pounds of bitter vegetables a year because you're avoiding it, because you're avoiding the flavor. But for people who don't taste bitter, they're actually at a higher risk of being alcoholics because they don't mind a lot of the bitter flavor that comes in alcohol.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's not an unambiguous good, one gene over the other. There's risks to either.
And the other thing I've learned about bitter foods is the GLP-1 receptors respond to bitter foods. So would those people maybe have a propensity for developing diabetes or obesity just because they are avoiding bitter foods and not stimulating those GLP-1s in their gut?
I'm not. I think that I think the mechanism might be slightly different. I'm just speculating here, but if I avoid bitter foods, what will I naturally gravitate towards? Sweet foods.
Right.
So it's I think I think that may be more of the mechanism, or at least contributing meaningfully to that mechanism. That they're just naturally wanting to have more sweet foods to cover up bitter flavor. Mm-hmm. So if someone going back to change your environment, not your willpower, so if someone has, like in the report going over your genes for bitter, if someone is a super taster for bitter, I detail out there's 4 separate ways you can cook bitter vegetables to make them taste less bitter. I mean, something as simple as like sauteing garlic and onions. Highly spicy foods cuts the flavor of bitter, for example. So there are ways, again, to change the environment, even if one's a super taster for bitter, that you can make your bitter vegetables more palatable.
Can we talk really quick about super taster? Let's unpack that just a little bit. When we did our functional medicine training, there was a little piece of paper that they had in the room, and we all put that on our tongue.
I know where this is going.
Yeah.
I hate these tests. I know what's supposed to happen.
We all put it on our tongue. And what percentage? Is it 1 out of 10, or is it like 1 out of 5? I can't remember the percentage of people.
It's at least 1 out of 10. And I can. So what a super taster is someone who's exquisitely sensitive to bitter, where they can detect things in like really low parts per million that something is bitter, and they want to like spit the thing out. Now, for my lens is always evolutionary biology and evolutionary psychology, if you want to understand the thing. So from an evolutionary biology standpoint, why would some people be exquisitely sensitive to bitter and some people wouldn't? Well, as hunter-gatherers, we're talking not 10,000 years ago, but like over 10,000, like 20, 30, 40, 50, 100,000 years ago, before agriculture, we were hunter-gatherers. And most plants out there for gathering don't want to be eaten. They don't like it. So they put these chemicals into their leaves, the roots, the stems, the flowers, whatever, to make them taste bitter, because usually bitter things will kill you. That's the bitter things are usually poison. Mm-hmm. So someone who's a super taster, they will in the short term survive much better, because if they detect bitter, they're less likely to eat any potentially poisonous vegetables. The problem with that is that there are plenty of vegetables, not obviously not the majority of plants in the world. Of all the plants in the world, tiny fraction are actually edible to humans. But of that tiny amount that is edible to humans, a lot of the ones that are edible that have good nutrition in them are also bitter. So they will be missing out on the nutrition of non-lethal consumable bitter vegetables. So it's a trade-off between short-term survivability and long-term nutrition. The people who are non-tasters, meaning that they don't really care if the thing is bitter or not, the taste doesn't bother them, they are more likely to die in the short term as a hunter-gatherer, because they'll eat something that's supposed to be toxic to them, but they missed it because they didn't detect the bitterness properly. But the trade-off is that they will eat more nutritious, bitter-flavored, edible vegetables. So this is in nature. It's all about trade-offs, and in evolutionary biology, nature does not give two hoots about you or me as an individual. It only cares about the lineage. How far can it get the genes into the future? So by creating variation over the generations of someone's reactivity, of a lineage's reactivity to bitter or inflammation or histamine or whatever it is, you're creating adaptability over time and against the backdrop of a changing environment. And that's how you get all these different variations in the genome. It's about survivability of the lineage over time. That's why we even have variations. We're not clones. If we were clones, I mean, the entire point of having sexual recombination, of having varied genes between, mixing genes of two people to create a child, is to prevent cloning. Because if you have one virus that got a unique foothold amongst a specific genetic pattern, it would wipe out all the clones at once. So your genome is willing to give up half of itself to combine with another half in order to stay one step ahead of infections, and to also give you a better chance to survive in a changing backdrop of your physical environment. So the entire project of having genetic variations may seem kind of random. It's not. It's not random. It is random in a sense of what genes combine, but when mom and dad combined their genetic material, it's random in a singular sense. But it's actually quite methodical, longitudinally over time to ensure the survivability of the lineage. And bitter is just one example. That the sensitivity to bitter is one example of that.
That's great. And I had interrupted you. Do you remember where we were going?
We were talking about the 4 legs of genetic-based diets.
Yes.
And we were in the middle of the third one.
Yes,
not in the middle. We were actually at the end of it.
Okay.
Then there's people's genetic affinity towards the flavor and texture of fat. So some people genetically crave more fat in their food because fat is not just a calorie source, it's a flavor and a texture. So genetically, if people crave more fat, then it's extra important that they really have high quality fats in their diet. And I have a whole chart of like what are the good fats, what are the bad fats. But then I would say equally important, maybe more importantly, depending on the situation, is how do you protect your fats so they don't go rancid? Because you can have really high quality fat and it goes rancid. And the 6 ways that fats go rancid are light, heat, time, air, plastic, bottles, and toxins. So light, heat, air, time, plastic, toxins. Those are the 6 ways that fats become damaged. So if you consume fat, you've got to make sure you protect it. So those are the three of the 4 legs. And then the 4th leg is looking at your relationship to inflammation and specific nutrients that your body needs more of based on your genetic reality. So, for example, when I did my genetics test in my 30s, I had creaking, aching joint pain in my hands and fingers like an 80-year-old man. And I was really worried because I'm in my 30s and I have hands that feel like I'm in my 80s. And I had been doing functional testing, doing 1 gram of fish oil and eating healthy diet, all these other things. And yet when I did my genetics profile, I found out that genetically I was a hyper-inflamer, meaning I was an over-inflamer because there's a couple hundred genes that are directly or indirectly related to inflammation, but this test checks for the top 15 or so. Of those 15, I had 13 out of 15 that were bad versions of these inflammatory genes. So I was hyper-inflammatory. And the inflammation, in my case, concentrated in my joints. And so what I learned from my genetics is that I really have to pay attention to not only an anti-inflammatory lifestyle and diet, but also there's some specific nutrients that I need higher amounts of than the average person. And there's a term for that. It's called nutrigenomics. It's a combination of the term nutrition and genomics. So nutrigenomics it's the difference between nutritional dosing and nutrigenomic dosing. Nutritional dosing is here's your 1 gram of fish oil. It's like throwing widgets into the anti-inflammatory machinery, and that's great. That's useful. Nutrigenomic dosing is over 2 grams of EPA DHA fish oil, which doesn't, just give widgets into the machinery. It actually changes the machinery. And that's the difference. It actually changes the expression of the genes to make the genes behave more in an anti-inflammatory way. So nutrigenomic dosing of fish oil helps change the genetic expression of inflammation as such. It's not just simply helping out with some inflammation that's floating around in the body. It's actually changing how your body responds to inflammation in total. And within a couple months, I can't remember at this point, it was a while ago, it was I think it was 1 or 2 months, maybe 3, I don't know. All my joint pain has gone away, and it's gone.
Amazing.
And it was just in pain for years, and then a couple months gone from information I learned from my genetics test. So those are the 4 legs of genetically determining your optimal diet. What your carb tolerance is, what your food triggers are, how genes affect your food choices and eating behaviors, and then what's your relationship to inflammation and specific nutrients that you genetically need more of to be in balance.
That's great. That really boils it right down. And we're actually going to be talking with Matt Dawson of True Diagnostic, who looks at epigenetic factors that help determine our biological age. But the nutrigenomic is how you would go in and modulate that, how you would change that, right?
Correct.
Yeah. Great. So I work with a lot of menopausal women, and I was wondering if your neuroharmony model focuses on helping menopause, perimenopausal women with their weight loss, because it does identify all these triggers that are coming to fruition as we age.
Sure. So there's many different factors that go into weight. I'll start with with the neuroharmony model includes lab testing and lifestyle analysis. So, for example, in the lifestyle analysis, one of the components of that is looking at sleep hygiene. And most people burn a lot of weight while they sleep because their body's repairing and doing all these other processes. So if I look at sleep hygiene, I look at morning and evening routines. I'd be looking at what their diet is, and we just talk how you determine that. We can look at nutritional profiles and genetic profiles. Are they being exposed to unnecessary toxic exposures, whether it's from off-gassing, the air, food, or any other ways of toxins being introduced to their system. I look at their exercise, which you can also look at the genetics of their exercise as well as in this test, that whether the people genetically the best exercise is for them, and also what their best methods of recovery are, and if they need to focus more on recovery. Some people are genetically just less inflammatory prone, and therefore they don't need as much recovery as someone like me who's hyperinflammatory. I'd also be looking at their digestion and seeing how well are they able to digest and absorb nutrients, but also to remove toxins. And I mean, as you and your listeners know, you remove processed hormones out of your gallbladder through the bile into the intestines to be pooped out. And if you've got sluggish intestines, then you're not getting rid of the hormones as you should be. And then I'll also be looking for hidden infections to see, because infections can really do a number, causing inflammation in the gut, which then puts a lot of stress on the liver and on the immune system, and that can affect your hormone system. And one of the easiest metaphors that I've heard around the connection between hormone regulation and inflammation is that one of the primary jobs of the liver is to deal with inflammation and also to deal with toxins. So if your liver is a kitchen and you had to deal with a garbage bag that was full, or two, a giant grease fire, what's the priority?
Yeah, exactly.
It's the grease fire.
Right.
So if your liver is inflamed through whatever mechanism, your liver is going to put hormone detox way to the side. Right. Way to the side. So this is the connection between inflammation and hormone problems. And inflammation can be from so many different things, whether it's infection or mold or toxins or processed food or high stress or sleep deprivation or untreated injuries that are creating pockets of inflammation, poor posture, terrible routines, lack of recovery and exercise or no exercise. There's all sorts of reasons for inflammation, and that will impair liver detox, which will affect hormone system. So that's from a lifestyle standpoint. From a lab standpoint, if I go to genetics, there's about a dozen to a dozen and a half separate genetic clusters that I've identified in the FitGenes report that relate to stubborn weight gain, and that's hard to get rid of. Those dozen to half dozen genetic clusters, I can actually shuffle into three categories. The first category is inflammatory water weight gain. So this is I put histamine in there, histamine intolerance, because histamine is the body's flood switch to, bee stings your arm. The bee didn't inject a half quart of water. It's the histamine released the water to drown all the venom the bee injected. And so if you eat high histamine foods, it's the equivalent of swallowing a slow-moving full-body bee sting. And so your body just swells with water. And no amount of exercise is going to meaningfully reduce that water weight unless you sweat and sweat and sweat and sweat and sweat.
Right.
But it's water weight, not caloric weight you're fighting against. Other sources of water weight are, for some people who've got the salt genes, some of those people really retain water because of salt. Then you've got people who are hyperinflamers, and they can retain a lot of water because inflammation, if you're hyperinflamed, inflammatory chemicals are damaging, and the body needs to dilute the inflammation in the spaces between the cells to prevent those inflammatory chemicals from poking at healthy tissue. This is, I'll give an example. My own father, who eats a very inflammatory diet, it took me so long to convince him, just for one day and one day only, to stop eating toasted bread and toasted cheese and other pro-inflammatory things. But he could have as much like broccoli, chicken, coconut oil, and coffee that he wanted. And I watched him during the day, and he ate plenty of calories, but he didn't have his normal pro-inflammatory foods. And he weighed himself before he started, and he weighed himself the very next morning when he woke up. He was 4 pounds lighter in one day.
Incredible.
4 pounds. Had nothing to do with calories. Zero.
Wow.
Because he didn't exercise that day. I know, because I watched him. And he ate plenty of food. It had nothing to do with calories. Absolutely nothing.
Wow.
That's
crazy.
He stopped being so pro-inflammatory, and his body was given a chance to get rid of this excess water weight that was used to buffer his cells from damaging inflammatory chemicals, because he bought himself time. The whole point of swelling with water from inflammation is to buy your liver and kidneys time to filter out the toxic inflammatory chemicals. But if you keep feeding them in, then your body's going to stay swollen.
Yeah.
So then you've got genes like the vitamin D. You about to say something?
Oh, yeah. We're at time, so if you can give us the last two, and then
last
we'll
two.
wrap
Okay.
it up.
So the last two causes for weight gain in genetics are a toxic hormone weight, and then you have fat calorie weight. So there are genes related to liver detox that, if they are not, if they have bad versions that make it hard for you to detox, then your body will stick toxins in the fat cells, which are the dirty closets of the body. And so your body will put on weight and keep on weight because it's got too many toxins that it doesn't want. If you try to clean out your closet and you just open it up and it just explodes everywhere, like your whole house is now a problem. So you have to be under very specific conditions for your body to let the toxins out of the fat cells. And then there's some people with genetics that make them pile on caloric fat because they have problems metabolizing their calories. And that's the least common reason I see difficulty getting rid of weight in the States. Vast majority of people I see are inflammatory water weight gainers genetically.
Sam, this has been so informative. It's been great.
Thank you.
And I think this has been with Dr. Sam Shay. I'll give you his contact information when we come back from commercial break. And thanks for tuning into Rooted in Healing, and we will be right back.
And now, more Rooted in Healing with Dr. Beth Claxton.
Hi, and welcome back. Thank you for tuning in today. I loved this interview with Dr. Shay. So filled with so much information. I wanted to recap just a few points because I know that my mind was really full at the end of this interview. So when looking at genetics, there are four main classifications that we can use to help us determine a diet that's optimal for us. We can look at genetics for carbohydrate tolerance, how we metabolize carbohydrates, and is a ketogenic diet better for us, or are we someone that can tolerate a Mediterranean diet with more carbohydrates in it? Number 2, foods that are trigger foods for us. Are we people that metabolize caffeine, or do we not? Do we have genes that would make us gluten sensitive, lactose intolerant, salt intolerant? Are we someone who has a propensity to alcoholism? Number 3, our eating behaviors and our choices based on flavor and texture, our sugar consumption. Do we taste bitter or not? And do we have a genetic propensity to maybe not feel full? That's number 3. Number 4, and our own genetic propensity to inflammation, and how we can use foods and supplementation to change this or modulate it. This is a practice called epigenetics. So all of these put together, this is what we talk about. It's a great interview. And if you'd like to know more about Dr. Sam Shay, you can go to his website, www.drshamshay.com. He's also on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And if you'd like to know more about my practice, BethClaxtonMD.com. You can email, you can get in touch with me through the website. You can also sign up for a free 15-minute connection call where we can move on to next steps if it seems like you're a fit for the practice. And if you'd like to go to previous episodes, hear the previous episodes of Rooted in Healing, go to the Rooted in Healing library, which can be found on mellowmountainradio.com. They're all there, and you can also go to Apple Podcast. We are every Saturday at 9 a.m. Broadcasting these interviews on KAZM 106.5 FM, 780 AM in Sedona. So until next time, my wish for you is to find everything in life that makes you feel vibrant and focus on that, because this is where our health is rooted.